let's go ahead and get started. This section we're calling Atomic Habits of a Healthy Marriage. And I'm going to go into why that has been titled. But let's first of all just get our hearts and our minds centered. Busy morning downstairs, going from one thing to the next. So let's make sure that we're completely and utterly focused. And as we prayed earlier, that all of those things that are potentially distracting, that we'll put them on the altar of God. And here's the great thing. God has invited us to do that. I mean, we're not saying, I need you. He said, bring it to me. You know, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden. And then what's the promise? I will give you rest. It's a promise. But it's contingent upon our bringing it to me. Come unto me. So let's do that, and then we'll get started with Atomic Habits of a Healthy Marital Relationship. God, we thank you for this group in this room, and God, we have every reason to believe that you want us all here for a time such as this. God, life is busy. It can be overwhelming at times. Sometimes we look at our schedules and we feel that we have been spread insanely thin, and we try to do something about it, and it doesn't seem to change because there's always something to take our time, to take sometimes the very best part of us, so that in a marriage we give our spouses the leavings, and that's never what you want. So help us, oh God, to be able to adopt healthy habits in order to be able to have strength for the long run in the journey. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen. Now let's begin talking about how long it takes an action to become habit. Now for the longest time, the literature said that if you do something consistently for 21 days, that it will become habitual. I'm sorry to tell you today that new research has indicated that's wrong, and it makes it harder. Today, statistics say that it takes 66 days. 66 days for an action ultimately to become a habit. Now, how many of you have spent your entire lives hearing the word habit or habits related to something that you don't want? You know, it's terrible. I need to get out of this habit. But let's turn the coin over. And let's talk about habits that are beneficial, good, and life-altering. Now, we call this Atomic Habits of a Healthy Marriage, and it's based on James Clear's book called Atomic Habits. And the reason he calls it Atomic Habits, he says, that all these little things that you do in your lives that ultimately become habitual, that they become powerful as an end result. And so maybe patience that this is a disclaimer that I'm going to give right now. And that is, Patience and I don't have it all together. Pastor Ryan said last night, you know, Holly and I are still works in progress, but Bill, when he shares tomorrow, probably has it all together. You probably looked at me and saw my head going, and it wasn't because I was trying to get a crick out of my neck, you know, because no. Every day is a journey, and every day is a learning experience, and we spend a lot of our lives falling down, getting up, dusting ourselves off, and moving forward. So it's much like experiencing God. So when you fail, failure doesn't have to be fatal unless you allow it. So the habits that we're going to talk about today are beneficial and a blessing and can take us all to a new level. And these are from Building Patient Sport. These have occupied our lives. I'm guessing that you have 10 or 20 more that could probably help us. So let's go ahead and get started. And Patience is going to give the first atomic habit.
All right. Never say anything bad or negative about your spouse to others. Don't say something negative about your spouse to your spouse, to your children about your spouse, to his parents, to your parents, to your coworkers, to your friends, to anybody. When I was working at a place in Bowling Green, I remember a conversation I had with a young lady there who was married, and she was just incensed. She was just giving her husband up one side and down the other. He wasn't there to defend himself, and so she was having at it about how he folded the towels. How he folded the towels. So I listened to her, and she just went on and on and on, and I was like, okay, hang on a minute. Did he fold the towels? Yes, he did. Well, then that's wonderful. And does it matter if you open the cabinet and some towels are folded one way and some towels are folded another way? Is it gonna make a difference in the spiritual world? Is it gonna make a difference on how what you get your kids through college or not? No, it's not. So, you know, don't, and I get so frustrated at work because I hear it all the time. People just giving their spouses a hard time. No, don't do that. Don't say anything negative about your spouse to your spouse. Or to anybody else.
Amen.
That's atomic habit number 1. Atomic habit number 2, I think, is really important. Never keep a secret from your spouse. Never keep a secret from your spouse. I have a saying that secrets in a marriage are sinister. And if you allow those secrets to build up in your life, then ultimately it's going to cause one of any number of things. It's going to cause mistrust. It's going to cause schism. It's going to cause pain. It's going to cause peril. It's going to cause all the things in your relationship that you do not want to have. So, talk to your spouse about everything. Work is an important place for all of us, and we honestly spend more time at work largely than we do at home. Yeah. And so there are things that happen at work that you need to come home and tell your spouse everything that's happened at work. So if you are a guy, you're here and you're thinking about healthy habits. If you have a lady at work that spends an inordinate amount of time talking to you, seeking your affirmation, you need to make sure to let your spouse know that you're talking to that person. And this is an aside. If you're a guy or a girl, either one, and someone of the opposite sex comes to you and tells you that he or she wishes that his or her spouse was more like you, the thing that you need to do is to be Joseph in the Old Testament. You need to run as quickly as you can, and run as quickly as you can to tell your spouse what has been said to you. And in relationship to work, I would encourage you to invite your spouse to come by and see you as often as you can, so that they'll be able to see your spouse, they'll know him or her by name, they'll know everything about you and your relationship with him or her, because you are elevating that relationship. You're talking about how wonderful the other person is. The only secret that you need to keep in a marital relationship is if you are throwing a surprise party for your spouse. That's the only secret that you need to keep. And if somebody tells you something and they don't know it, you need to tell them that telling you the secret is as good as telling your spouse the secret. No secrets should be kept in a marriage. Okay, the third healthy atomic habit is to continually express appreciation for what your spouse does and who your spouse is. I'm here to tell you, we talked about love languages downstairs, and they're legitimate. And Gary Chapman has made a mint just off of me. recommending books to people, and I've given away 100 of those books myself, and all of those are good. But I don't care what love language you speak. It does something for you when someone expresses appreciation for what you do or what you've done. I mean, think about as a kid. I mean, the ploy that your parents used. You know, when you worked at something and they told you that you were the best, that you were good at that, they were doing it because they wanted you to do it again. And you've done that as parents yourself. But all of us have this urge to be appreciated, to be loved, to be cared for. So much as Patience said just a moment ago, it doesn't matter how they do it. Just make sure that you appreciate that they've done it. So guys, if your wife is the primary cook, and in our relationship, it's a good thing that my wife is the primary cook because we would both starve.
Yeah, but you do a good dish.
Well, that's what we do. I'm the cleaner. She's the cooker. That's perfect for me. But if she doesn't make mashed potatoes like your mother made mashed potatoes, don't say to her, I wish that you made mashed potatoes like my mother made mashed potatoes. Learn to like the mashed potatoes that are on your plate because
or pretend.
Or pretend. Because you may not get mashed potatoes. And so girls, if your husband, if he mows the yard, and Patience has mowed the yard far more than I have, but if your husband mows the yard and he doesn't mow it like your dad mowed it, that's okay. Don't say, I wish you mowed the yard like my dad mowed it. Just express appreciation that he did it. So anything, doesn't matter how long you've been married, anything that your spouse does for you, anything your spouse does generally, just get it in your consciousness. I'm going to express appreciation by words or by actions. And so you're going to be affirming and lifting up and blessing. The next healthy habit is to practice active listening. That's always been hard, but today it's harder than ever before. You want to know why? Because of this. We went to Cadova's to eat the other day because we had a gift card, and I noticed there were 3 guys that were sitting there, and it looked like they worked together. And they'd all finished their meals, and they all had their faces in their phones. Not a word was being spoken. They all had
They were
their
probably
faces.
texting each other.
They very well may have been. But make sure that when your spouse is talking to you, that you're all in. Have you ever had a child come up to you and they're telling you something and you're invested in something else and perhaps you're looking elsewhere, and they take you by the chin and they fold you over so that they are able to look in your eye? That's the point. So when you're talking, when you're communicating, there's nothing so important on your phone. No sports score, no business transaction. There is nothing more important than what your spouse is saying to you. And if you're all in, then you're indicating to him or her that I'm interested in who you are and I'm interested in what you're doing. And so by doing that, then you are indicating that there is nothing more important in this world than you. And we all need that in every way. Patience, you got the next healthy habit.
Number 5 is do special things for your spouse. Do special things for your spouse. Now, the only way you're going to know how to do special things for your spouse is to know your spouse. So that's a given. My spouse likes sports. Guys, how many of you guys like sports? How many of you guys have ESPN app on your phone with notifications on? Women, how many of you have ESPN app on your phone
All right.
with notifications on?
Yeah. Patience is one.
The other day we were doing something and I said, "Hey Bill, such and such just happened." He was like, "Really? What?" I mean, that's so little, but goodness gracious, that's something that he loves, and if I get to tell him first and he hasn't figured it out yet, that's a win, so there you go. Let's see, oh, I do this one thing for Bill. Some of you all will be able to relate to this, and some of you will be like, really? I iron Bill's handkerchiefs.
Yes, he does.
Now, some of you will say, what's a handkerchief?
Yeah. If you're younger, you may not know.
And you still carry handkerchiefs, whatever, but Bill carries a handkerchief all the time because I tend to need one. He always has one. And I iron his handkerchiefs. They feel better when they're ironed.
She's right.
Yeah. So I have a little method for how I do it, and I iron his handkerchiefs. That's just something that I do for him because I know that he likes it. There's another thing that I do for him, and this is gonna take a minute. My husband, unless he is under great duress, does not fly. Now, there is
I love terra firma.
there is a real specific reason for that. When he was a kid, about 8 years old, he fell from a high dive onto the concrete. And from that point forward, he would like to keep his feet solidly on the ground. That's fine. I would fly in fact, have flown in Chinooks and all kinds of fixed-wing aircrafts because I think it's the coolest thing ever.
She'd fly to work every day. She'd never get that.
My next thing I want to do now that I don't have to have life insurance anymore is to hang glide and then maybe jump out of a plane, but whatever, I digress. My husband does not like to fly. I don't make him feel bad about not liking to fly. I don't pressure him to fly. In fact, I embrace the fact that he doesn't fly. One year we had to go to Seattle and we drove. We drive everywhere. But because we drive everywhere, I go through and I figure out the route that we're gonna take so that we can see things along the way. How many of you all have seen the Corn Palace? Well, we stumbled across the Corn Palace in South Dakota because we were driving to Seattle. It is awesome. It's the coolest place ever. And if you're flying over top of it, you don't see it, right? We saw Mount Rushmore on that trip. Now, a lot of people go to Mount Rushmore because they make an effort to go to Mount Rushmore. That's on their plan. We were going someplace else and we stopped there on our way. But we also got to see Crazy Horse.
We did. Yeah.
We got to see, not on the same trip, a whole bunch of Cadillacs buried in the dirt in Amarillo, Texas.
Oh, yes.
Right by the interstate. I had no idea it existed, but there it is.
Very cool.
We got to see the Great Salt Lake and the fact that there was a salt company right there in the middle of it all, go figure. We got to see 29 Palms, California. There's a story behind that.
Yes, it is.
There are so many places in our country that we have seen that we wouldn't have seen if we flew on an airplane. We would have stories about airports, but we wouldn't have stories about all the wonderful places that we've seen and who we've been able to see them with and all that kind of stuff. And that is something special that I'm able to do for Bill because that's how we get from point A to point B, and we do a lot of traveling is that way. I will tell you one more story about doing something special for my spouse. One year, and I'm sure Bill could tell you exactly which year, but whatever. We were going on spring break to Florida, and I had been thinking about this ahead of time, and had figured out that there was going to be a regional basketball game. University of Kentucky. It's no accident that I'm wearing blue today, and the Duke Blue Devils, which, you know, UK Duke, you know, we are in the center of Duke, in Tampa, Florida. Well, we were going to Homosassa, Florida, which was just north of Tampa. So I kept a secret and went went behind the scenes.
It's like a surprise party.
This is endorsed. I also spent some money without telling him, which we'll get into later. And I got us tickets to go see UK Dudes. But I just was beside myself. I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to tell him. So we were fixing to get in the car to drive to Florida with our two boys. Did we have Lizzie?
That was BL before Lizzie.
No, I think we had Lizzie.
Did we?
Unless was it 97?
98.
Yeah, we didn't have Lizzie.
Okay,
Yeah, we didn't have it. Whatever. So we were getting ready to get in the car to go, and I said, honey, there's something I've got to tell you. I just can't take it any longer. He was like, okay. I told him what we were gonna do. Well, I thought he was gonna bust. And every place we stopped on the way to Florida, at the gas station, at McDonald's, guess what?
Hey, we're gonna go see Kentucky and Duke, you guys. Okay. Have fun.
And that was the game, if you don't remember, where we were down by 18 in the first half and came back and won the game.
And ultimately won the national championship.
Oh yeah, I forgot that part. Do special things for your spouse. Know your spouse, know what makes them happy, and do special things for your spouse.
The other atomic habit is to plan dates with your spouse. Now, anytime I do premarital counseling with people and I talk to them about planning dates with their spouse, they look at me like I have two heads. Because what they're thinking is, we've done the dating, we did that prior to our marriage, and once you get married, the dating is over. Well, my contention is that dating is more important after you get married than even before. So it requires some time and some effort and some planning, but there's no substitute for dating your spouse. You know, one of the things that may work for you is, you know, I'll tell you about the date we do every week, but there's nothing wrong with doing it every week, but you certainly need to do it every month. I would be the one that would say you need to do it every week. So just take turns planning it. You know, you plan it, she plans it the next week. And it requires some time, some effort, some energy, and if you have small children, you're going to have to get some babysitters. And it is going to cost something, but I'm here to tell you, people talk about money well spent. That is money well spent. Particularly if you have small children. And there's nothing wrong with this. They occupy so much of your time. And that's what it means to raise children, because a lot of your life revolves around them. But it doesn't matter if you don't have children. You still need to have that time where you're just away from all the distractions, where perhaps you're seated at a table and you can talk like two adults. There's no substitute for dating. I mean, you know, we have been empty nesters now for quite some time. But every Monday night, and Laban can tell you, when I leave here on Monday to go home, we're always going to do the same thing. We go to Chipotle's in Lexington. We are. We go to Chipotle's in Lexington, and we eat, and then we go to Andy's. I've got Leighton on Andy's now. And we go to Andy's for ice cream, and then we go home. And that's important. And so
we do this so often that now the people at Andy's start getting our stuff together when they see us.
That's right. We pull up and the guy says, "Hey, here it is." And so I told patients, if we ever change your order, we have to call ahead. No surprise then. So.
Okay, number 7. Always share "I love you" with your spouse. Literally. Share "I love you" with your spouse. Now, you can show your spouse that you love them in lots of different ways, and we've talked about the 5 love languages. You can give them gifts, you can spend time with them, you can do things for them like fold the towels, you can encourage them with affirmation, you can hold their hands. That's your cue.
I couldn't get my hand on my I'll let you down.
No. Those things are important, and you need to figure them out and do them. And if you look at what we are telling you today in the 10 habits that we have decided to talk about, they are nestled in amongst these things that we're talking about. But they should not be a substitute for saying the words, I love you. Now, some of you may say, I grew up in a home where those words were never spoken. Okay, I get that. Change it. Change the narrative.
Right.
Say the words, I love you. There's just no substitute for it. I just can't stress that enough. And I'm holding hands with Bill right now to show another example of something, and that is, there are two things that we do in holding hands. One is, if we're walking together, we are either gonna be holding hands or we're gonna be walking arm in arm. Partly because I like to see the little young guys go by and say,
Those old people.
Partly because it's warm to be arm in arm right now. Nate Bargatze talks about the difficulty of getting out of a car and walking from a car into a building, and that the guy tends to walk ahead and the girl's kind of like walking along behind. No, walk hand in hand together, walk arm in arm, whatever, be together, holding hands.
But we honestly are doing it wrong from what we normally do.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. That's
Yeah.
not right either.
Oh, okay.
That's
There we go.
not-
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
We figured that out.
I don't know why that is, but.
But there's another thing about holding hands. We did this last night in the session downstairs. Every time we're together and we pray for some reason, we are holding hands.
That's right.
And the reason for that is because we love each other, but we also love the Lord. And this is one of the ways that we express to Him, I love you, we love you, we are together holding hands in your presence. Whether it's a blessing, whether it is a benediction at church, whether it is somebody praying for somebody else in our presence, we are gonna be holding hands when we pray.
One of the coolest things because of that is now when we pray at the table on Sunday night when our whole family is together, our grandchildren, we see them holding their hands out for somebody to take it. We're at 10:30, patients, we're doing fine, but you go ahead.
Okay, number 8. Make purchase and financial decisions together. Make purchase and financial decisions together, unless you're scheduling a surprise.
Yeah.
And then all bets are
And
off.
then all bets.
How many of you all are familiar with James Dobson, and his, discussion about the nerd and the free spirit? It's Dave Ramsey, sorry, I got it backward, Dave Ramsey. The nerd and the free spirit, y'all know about that? Tell them about that.
Here's what he says: a nerd is a person who parts with money very carefully. The free spirit, as it suggests, is a person who has no trouble spending money. So this is what he says about nerds and free spirits. He said, if two nerds get married, they never have any fun. If two free spirits get married, they never have any money. So he said the best thing to happen is to have a nerd and a free spirit to get married so that they're able to balance each other, and that's what we've been able to do.
So I love numbers. I would be glad to teach and tutor algebra all day long. But you give me a budget and I'm going to gag. Or worse. He is the nerd and I am the free spirit. Now, what I have to say about that is coming from the perspective of the free spirit. You all can think about your own relationships and, decide if you're both nerds, both free spirits, or one of each. Encourage, from my perspective, encourage the nerd. He's doing something, balancing the books, making a budget, investing, and I'm not having to do it. So encourage the nerd, because it's very important. if it's important, because it's important to him to save and to spend wisely, then make that your own, need as well, to help save and spend wisely. Now, I have another, slant on that, and that is, I have to be very careful, because I know how much Bill loves me. And, I know that if I say, oh honey, I saw the most beautiful fill in the blank the other day, and it was just so gorgeous. Now, I have to then say to him, I'm not telling you to go buy that for me, because it is really pretty, but I don't want it on my shelf, you know, I don't want you to go buy it. If that's the case, then that's what I say to him. But if it's not the case, if I really, really want it, I have to be really careful, because he will go get it. And, I can use that to my advantage. And that is not a good thing. So you have to know how each other operate, you have to know how your brains operate. You have to be willing to kind of give and take a little bit about that. I think both of us, I have gotten a little more nerdy, and he's gotten a little more flexible as time has gone by. And as a result, we have been able to retire at a very reasonable age. Some of us retire better than others. And I'm still working too. I'm still working too, so I can't say a whole lot. But we have been able to reach our financial goals because of all the work that he has done to get us where we need to be. And so it's very important to be able to encourage the nerds. So make your purchase and financial decisions together.
Let me add one thing to that. As a nerd, all of my life I have said, I want to go to Cooperstown, New York and see the Baseball Hall of Fame. I can tell you with all assurances that one day, if it had been up to me, I would have died without going to Cooperstown. Because I was always saying, well, you know, let's wait till next year when we're a little better able, we won't have this. And one day, Patience called me and she said, okay, here's the deal. She said, we're going to Cooperstown. She said, you've always wanted to see the Hall of Fame. My sister lives in Grantham, Pennsylvania. We're going to stay with her and our brother-in-law on the way up. And we're going to Cooperstown, and we're going to see the Hall of Fame because that's what you've always wanted to do. And otherwise, I would still be saying, let's wait till next year.
One of the few times I've seen Bill tear up was in the car before we were going into Cooperstown, and I videoed him and said, what are you feeling right now? And he teared up saying this, you know, I thought I'd never get here.
Yeah, it was a dream. And when I was a kid, it might as well have been on Jupiter, you know, Cooperstown, New York. But anyway, number 9, Fish.
Number 9, be your spouse's biggest cheerleader. Now, this is, falls along the lines of words of affirmation, I guess, but not only should you be your spouse's cheerleader to him, but be your spouse's biggest cheerleader to others. Recommend your spouse to other people. If your spouse has whatever your spouse's field of expertise is, if you find somebody that needs that, then refer them to him. But always be quick to be able to give the words of affirmation to him, but also to others about him. Interestingly enough, you say something really positive about your spouse to somebody over here, it's gonna end up getting to him what you said to them. So do that. Encourage your spouse to do God's will. The affirmation and the cheerleader part, you know, sometimes they may be thinking, I feel like God's leading me to do such and such. Encourage them and help them to see whether or not it is God's will, and encourage them to be able to do that or not to do that based on that. another thing about being their cheerleader is to defend them fiercely. Our granddaughter gave me an example of this week. She has a boyfriend. She's 20 and her boyfriend's about the same age. And she brought him to a Christmas function with us this past year, and he's delightful. He's absolutely delightful. We were all very, very impressed by this young man. He has a very obvious physical handicap, and he walks with two canes and not canes, crutches, and has basically his entire life. And so his legs are twisted, and if he doesn't have his crutches, he can't go to a buffet. Somebody has to get him for him. He depends so much on the crutches. Our granddaughter was with a friend of hers. Not sure I would like to have this as a friend.
Yeah, might rethink that friendship.
And her friend was saying some bad things about this boyfriend and said, "I'd just like to kick those crutches out from under it." You talk about fierceness coming up in this girl. She was fiercely defensive of this man. And she should have been. What a terrible thing to say about somebody, even if, whatever. And I was able to tell her how proud I was of her for being so fiercely defensive of her boyfriend. Because if she wasn't defensive and protective of him, who was going to be? Nobody. There was nobody else present. So if somebody is being critical, just slap them. Write that down. No, I'm teasing. But I want to finish with this words of the cheerleader part, with this story. Bill and I had been dating for a while, and it was very obvious to me that Bill had been called into the ministry. And I had been called to do drugs. Well, I was going to be a pharmacist. So, I remember talking to the Lord, and I remember saying to him, "God, I know you've called him into the ministry, but you did not call me to be a preacher's wife." Well, actually, what he did was he called me to be a preacher's wife that broke the mold. I'll just say
For sure.
But one of the things that Bill did for me to be my cheerleader was he said to me, "You do and you be who God is calling you to do and be." And if God, I had this picture in my mind of all of the pastors' wives that I had ever known, who played the piano and taught everything that was possible to be taught, and just, did everything, like everything. And who sometimes had mental breakdowns and crashed and burned because of the pressures that they were under. And so he gave me the freedom to be me and to be who God called me to be. The fact that I ended up playing the piano and sometimes the organ in church was okay, because that's what God called me to do in our first church where nobody else played the piano. Right. He called me to be really involved in missions, because that was a passion of mine and a passion of God's. I was able to really allow my gift of teaching to flourish in the different Sunday school classes that I had, or the different mission groups that I had. And all of that was because I was not afraid of some stigma that was going to be attached to what I was doing. I was willing to do what God was calling me to do, and what I wanted to do because of God's calling, because Bill was my biggest cheerleader.
Last one is celebrate special occasions. Celebrate special occasions.
5 minutes.
We can do it. I learned this the hard way, not through patience, but through my mom. She would probably get me if she'd ever tell me this story, but when I was in college, I asked her, Mom, what would you like for me to get you for Mother's Day? She said, oh, Bill, you don't have time to go out and get anything. I know you're on a limited budget. Don't get me anything. So I'm very practical, and so I didn't get her anything. So the next time I was home, something was wrong, and I could tell. So when my dad and I kind of got separated, I said, Dad, something's wrong with Mom. What's wrong? He said, you didn't get her a Mother's Day present. I said, but he said, I know. So I learned a very valuable lesson. It doesn't matter what they say. Celebrate every special occasion you can. Don't miss a birthday. Don't miss an
missed your
anniversary.
birthday once.
There's a story behind
But
that.
that's what I did.
Well, you did, but I did too. I asked her at 8 o'clock at night. We'd done a wedding. We were moving. This was early on. And I said, what day is today? She said, it's June the 2nd. And she went, oh, I missed your birthday. I said, if I don't remember my own birthday, you shouldn't have to remember it either. But make sure that you remember special occasions, and I would encourage you to make up special occasions. If you remember when you started dating, make that date sacred. If you did something special as a couple 25 years ago, that's a memory. Go out and eat and talk about that. Because make up days. Patience and I celebrate National Wombat Day on October the 22nd. So make up your own special occasions, but just make sure that you celebrate. I had a seminary professor tell me once, he said, Bill, one of the things I think God hates about his creation is that we are too busy and too involved and too invested to properly celebrate his life. Life is short. Celebrate every opportunity you have. Let me close like this. Elin Hildebrand is an author, and I probably would not read any of her books normally. But we were in Vermont once, and we passed a library, and there was a big sign that said, sale. And I'm a reading nerd, and I saw your list the other day of Kentucky authors. I'm a reading nerd, so Patience went in with me. And there was this novel about Christmas that I just bought. And then I bought 2 more later. You might call her works beach reads. And I probably wouldn't do that normally. But the last book she wrote about this family in this Christmas series, one of the main characters died. And so his wife is reflecting. And she said to herself, to God, to anybody, she said, you know, it's the strangest thing. It takes a whole afternoon to play Monopoly. When you work out, it seems to take a week. But life is lived in an instant. So I would encourage you that since life is lived in an instant, don't miss a thing. Adopt the habits that are good for your family, and make sure that when you leave this place, that you've got everything out of this life that God has wanted to have. Let me pray with you, and then we'll go down and hang out with Pastor Ryan one more time. God, we thank you for the weekend that we've had, and the things that we've learned, the things that have been taught, and the camaraderie that we've had, the laughter, the conversation, the books, and everything. So God, we pray that we will take it, do something with it, positive, encouraging, godly, and that we might be lights in the midst of a dark world, not because of who we are, but because of who you are. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen. Listen, as you're walking out, if you didn't get Willard Harley's book, get all of them, because they're great. They're free, for crying out loud. So they read better when they're free. It's like free food. It tastes better when it's free. This is called His Needs, Her Needs, Making Romantic Love Last. When I discovered Willard Harley a number of years ago, I thought, much like Gary Chapman and Larry Crabb, these guys get it. So you won't be sorry that you picked this up.
So we have permission to go